Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lonely Overlander. This week we're making a little more progress with the Overland build on Bad Mule 2. Got a couple more things checked off the list of stuff I have to do before my first trip. If you recall in my last episode, I finally got the Velcro roof rack installed. I did some paint protection film and some foam padding on there to hopefully, fingers crossed, protect the painted roof while I'm loaded up and traveling. So I got a couple of big trips planned for this summer. The new truck, and hopefully with the new revised loadout configuration, I definitely want to do a shakedown run before I head out on these big longer trips. And one item on my work today that's indispensable on any trip, I'm sure many of you will agree, is a tailgate table. Whenever you're setting up for the night somewhere in a remote area and you need to food prep and cook your supper, table space is an absolute necessity. But before we get into that install, I've been meaning to get to the back of the Bronco ready for the load platform. Like I mentioned, I plan on going with just a 50% rear seat delete this time. My last build had the fridge slide out on the driver's side, opposite of where the tailgate table resides, and I think this layout makes the most sense. You basically have the classic, efficient triangulated kitchen layout space at the back of the Bronco this way. Removal of the rear floor cover and back seat is a pretty straightforward process. The rear seat cushion and seat back are two separately attached pieces. The bottom cushion using just a pair of Torx fasteners, but the upright is anchored with 4 large fasteners and also used, like in many automotive situations, as a child seat tether and seatbelt buckle attachment point as well. Like I said, pretty straightforward. That is, until the dreaded forward barred push pins used on the trim covers. I'll spare you the cussing and outrage and just edit out this particular scene. Suffice it to say, you'll just end up cutting these push pins out and come to the realization that you'll never ever reuse them again anyway. The actual reason you need to pull apart the trim covers is to remove the buckle, because as you can see here, there is an electrical plug attached to them. I'm not exactly sure why, possibly to do with the side curtain airbag deployment. Without having the buckle plugged into the truck, you'll get a malfunction indicator light on the dash. So the only way I know to avoid that is to just plug it back in and stash the buckle under the floor padding. Okay, so now onto the tailgate table. If you were an early adopter of the tailgate table for the Bronco, you were probably stuck with just one option like me, and that is the Ford accessories table. Don't get me wrong, it's a good quality, sturdy unit, but it does require you to drill mounting holes into your tailgate, something some owners are understandably reluctant to do. The kit comes with everything you need for the job, including a 4-pack of riv nuts and a tool for squeezing them into your mount holes, which is all good. But what if, like myself, you need to remount the table to a new Bronco and you don't have any of the single-use riv nuts on hand? I thought long and hard on the best way I was going to go about doing this. Unlike some table options available now, I don't think there's a way to do the Ford table without actually drilling holes into your tailgate. So because I have a background in the aerospace industry, the solution I come up with was to use a set of these floating anchor nuts to secure the table. And for fixing them, using this nifty, indispensable anchor nut drill jig for spotting and drilling the rivet mounting holes. However, because I went with a larger 1/4-28 threaded mount, the anchor nut hole pitch turned out to be 1 inch on the anchor as I ordered. But my jig was meant for, well, smaller than 1 inch hole spacing, for number 8 and number 6 size anchor nuts, for example. So after marking, spotting, and opening up the bolt holes for the anchor nuts, I basically just eyeballed the rivet mount holes as best I could using the anchor nuts as my guide. Again, using my dull drill with a depth stop on it so I don't punch a hole through the outside tailgate skin, I drill out the pair of rivet mount holes for the anchor nut. By the looks of how this top rivet hole drilled out, there seems to be something in behind interfering with the bit. Not a big deal, I'm certain there's room in behind for the anchor nut still, but as it turns out, this little minor realization was a small foreshadowing of what was about to come. After drilling out all the required openings, I used my deburring tool to clean the holes and applied a dab of iodine to the bare aluminum to help prevent corrosion. So you're probably saying to yourself, well, that's all fine and dandy so far, but how are you going to mount those anchors behind the panel? That's a good question. Here's a technique I learned while building bush planes when I lived up in Muskoka. Simply grab yourself a nice length of stainless safety wire. Carefully wind a few turns of the wire around the threaded portion of the anchor nut and squeeze the loop so it stays put and doesn't slip off. Now carefully slide the nut through the conveniently located hole near your drill holes and position it in line with the rivet holes that you made. Using a pair of Calico pliers, add a Calico to one side of the anchors to keep it in place. I then use a small awl and locate and center the opposite rivet hole. I could pop a rivet in the second hole straight away, but I wanted to ensure myself that the hole was properly lined up by using another Calico. There's nothing worse than popping a rivet and missing what you're trying to attach. Once you're assured yourself of the positioning, pull out the first Calico and add your rivet. I just used aluminum rivets here, seeing as this wasn't anything structural I was adding to the tailgate, as the load of the table is placed on the slotted openings and not the fasteners, and to also prevent any galvanic corrosion, which would likely occur if I use steel rivets in the aluminum panel. Once you have the second rivet in place, simply yank out the safety wire and continue around to the next holes. As fortune would have it, it turned out the fourth and final hole I came to was completely inaccessible from the outside. It looks like maybe Ford added some hinge reinforcement in behind here, maybe some stringers or gusseting plates. So, well, no anchor nut here. So for plan B, I suppose I could open up the hole a little further and drop in a 1/4 inch rubber weld nut. On to the final assembly. As it turns out, all 4 locating points use a rubber washer in behind to space out the table from the tailgate. Seeing as the weld nut basically has a built-in rubber washer, it stands to reason that the most logical remounting solution then would probably just be 4 rubber weld nuts and then call it a day. Oh well. Next we want to attach the table to the pivot pins on the frame. Draw on the brackets to eliminate any side play and start tightening everything down. And of course, one of the best features of the Ford tailgate table is the molly panel they use for the bottom side of the table. This makes adding some of your gear to it was super convenient and easy access. One of the few things that didn't get salvaged from the Badlands Bronco was the actual load floor. So if you recall, I might have mentioned on a previous episode that I was planning on going to Niagara Falls last weekend to visit my friend Dino, and we were going to get started on the load platform. I'm doing something a little different this time. I'm going to do maybe a 50% seat delete. I'm going to reorganize the Milwaukee packouts a bit for easier access. However, that trip was canceled because of weather. As I look to the forecast for the upcoming weekend, it looks like pretty much more of the same. Lots of rain. So we're going to have to rain check that again. The weekend after this weekend is, of course, the Victoria Day long weekend. I was hoping to have something maybe set up to do a shakedown run, but unfortunately that's not going to happen either. I definitely want to do something before these bigger trips. So I'll see if I can book some time off work and maybe do a long weekend excursion once I get something set up. Something else that also didn't get salvaged was the auxiliary power outlet panel that I made in the back. It was comprised mostly of Amazon parts, and it had its own issues, and I wasn't really 100% sure about the reliability of it. So that'll be another project to do, see if I can come up with something else there. All that was mostly just a convenience thing. I really just need the power to
run the Bouge RV fridge on longer trips. Everything else for recharging my gear and whatnot, that was just mostly convenience, but I could figure out another way to do that. The main thing, of course, is that load platform. So getting going on that will be the biggest priority. Before any of those trips happen, though, I have some mud flaps that are on the way. I'm going to try out and do an install video on, do some testing, and of course I got the open road winch and the rough country high mount winch mount that's going to go on. That's something, of course, the first Bronco didn't have, but in retrospect, I don't think that would have really helped me anyway on my trips. But stay tuned to the channel because I have some info coming up on the first big trip of the summer. Brian from Overland North, he's got something planned. We're going to do a trip from Sudbury to Timmins and back, overland, and it's going to be him and me and probably 6 other trucks. So that's something different for me, traveling with a big group like that, but it should be an awesome trip. Hopefully I have everything 100% ready to go and tested by then. There's lots of time yet for that, so I'm hopeful. But until then, thanks for stopping by. Take care, and we'll see you again on the next episode.